So it's time to go on to the hem facings. For this is view B, which has the split hem. There are separate hem facings for the front and back. They're very similar and they're almost the same size, although not quite. So I suggest when you cut them out, you safety pin them or something to the pattern piece so that you don't mix them up. You should start by just finishing what'll end up being the top of the facing. Just finish those edges. If you wanted to make something fancy, like put a little stretch bias binding or something there, like to make a designer look, that would be cool. What you're going to do is set this is the front of the pant here. And what you're going to do is just sew them on 3 sides. So you'll put your facing on right sides together. So this is the right side of the pant. And you're just going to sew with a 5/8 inch or 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. So you're going to sew along 3 sides, 1, 2, 3, and you're going to do that on the fronts and the backs. And then just take some good sharp scissors and just snip a tiny bit in here. I'll show you exactly how to do that in a sec. It'll make it easier to turn it out and then prepare it for the split hem treatment that we're going to go on to in the next step. So here again is the fronts with the front facing. This seam has been finished, and we're just going to sew the 5/8 inch all the way around 3 sides. When I get to the corners, I'll show you a little trick that you can do to ensure that you get a nice sharp corner. Something that's sometimes helpful if you're not sure where that 5/8 or 1.5 centimeters is you just mark it somehow. In this case, you can see that that's where we're approaching it. And then when you're about there, instead of just taking a right turn, you can angle it at about 45 degrees and take a couple little stitches on the bias and then continue. When you do that, you give yourself a tiny bit of space for what's called turn of cloth. Essentially, you're giving yourself a tiny bit of space for just the fabric itself, because it's going to probably kind of bunch up a tiny bit otherwise. Again, I will just take a couple stitches on the 45 degrees here, and then resume going up to the end. And then when you get into where you finished up this top, you just knot it off. Next, what you need to do is just snip into the pant leg seam allowance a little bit. So you'll see here's the 5/8, and you want to just snip maybe a 1/2 inch or about 1.25 centimeters or so on either side. Just right where that facing ends, right there. And then trim all this away so that it's not bulky. So when you trim it, you'll just trim it right up to that point. And that whole chunk will just come away. Do the same thing on the other side. And then the bottom, of course. And then you'll have these little ear tag, dog tag hairs on the end, and you can just snip those off. Again, sort of at a 45-degree angle to where you stitched. You can see that. And just cut that little tag, the little ear off. And then also, I'm going to just take one more little pass at this. It's still a little bulky right there. Okay. Great. And then you're gonna turn it to the inside of the pant, because this again is a facing, right? So if it's facing its inside, it's facing your body, in other words. And if you have like a little point turner like this, it can be handy to get in the corner there. Good. You'll give it a press, but you'll see that you'll get a pretty good sharp little point here. And so you're going to do that on the front and the back. And so you'll end up with something that looks like this. It looks like the hem, and then there's this strange little extension at the bottom. But when they go together, this is where the split will be. So you will sew, when you sew the fronts and the backs together, you'll stop like right at this point. So you'll have the split hem part will be free. This is a great little method, and thank you to Adriana, the graphic designer, who suggested it. I think it works better than a traditional way of doing it. So go ahead and do that also on the backs, and then I'll show you how it goes together. So here we have the fronts and the backs. I'm going to right sides together. So lay them right sides together, and you'll see here's the hem with the turned in bit that we did, and this is finished. And then what you're going to do is just sew the inseam, and you can pin it so the inseam, so the outseam, and at the very end, right where the facing meets the side, you can sew a little bar tack. You can make a decorative one if you want, or you can just make it unobtrusive. You do you. If you're not sure about the fit of the pants, what you can do is just baste the front and the back. You'll get a chance to try them on, assess the fit, and then you can make any adjustments before you commit. And you're sewing along. I've just sewn the inseam here, and I'm just going to do a close up and show you how to manage the end of where the split hem is. So I'm just going to finish sewing this, and then as you approach the place where you snipped, just move the fabric out of the way here a little bit so that there's space. And you get to the end here. There we go. Okay. What you can do is just do a couple of zigzags back and forth to secure it. Or if you wanted to get a little fancy, I'll just show you what it looks like on the right side. Just like this. And then you're going to press and finish these seams. But if you wanted to get a little fancy right here, I'll just give you a little close-up of what that looks like. You can always, my machine happens to have a pretty good bar tack stitch, so I'm going to use that. It is oriented in this direction. So for starters, maybe just to keep this sane, you can pin that if you like. And then just do a little bar tack, a little zigzag back and forth a couple times. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, unless you want it to be. You can knot it off. And it'll look like that, and it'll just keep just a little extra insurance for your split hem. If you wanted to, if you have decorative stitches, you could do a little something fancy there, maybe you could also sew a little button or something if you wanted to jazz up your hem a little bit more. So you're going to do that on both sets of front and back, and then we are going to put the pants together. So here's our finished split hem, which makes a diamond on its own over here. You can see how this is tucked in, the side seams are finished, and there's a bar tack. And then the final thing that you want to do is just tack down the facing a little bit. And again, I'm just going to pin it in place so I'll know where we're going. And then again, I'm using a dark thread, but you would definitely want to use a matching thread for this sort of thing. And you can just start at the end here and take a little, usually you can fold it over and just do a tiny little nibble stitch through the pant leg to the side, and then go, I think maybe people are familiar with this little hand stitch, this little crossover hand stitch, which is very useful for hems. So forth, just take a little nibble there. And just go all the way around both of the hems. And again, you can see it here on the right side because I use the dark thread, but use a matching thread so it doesn't show. And you'll just want to tack these facings down, and you'll be all set with the facings.